morning, everyone. This is Rick Murphy with AllNet. Thank you for joining us this morning. This morning we're going to be reviewing the Lutron RA2 Select product line. This line was just introduced at the CEDIA show a couple weeks ago. With us today as our presenter, we've got Paul from Archibald & Meek. They are the local Lutron reps here in Illinois. And Paul will be doing the presentation today. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Paul from Archibald & Meek and Lutron.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. Again, as Rick mentioned, we have a new product called RA2 Select, which I think you should be pretty excited about. Lutron, if you've ever been to any Lutron training or if you've ever done an online Lutron training, you're familiar with the triangle that's on your screen now. So Lutron has always looked at the overall market in different segments, obviously the lower end of the spectrum and what would be considered a typical middle class. You know, they're accustomed to wall box and sensors, and what we consider wall box is just regular dimmers, switches, fan speed controls. But not devices that are going to be system enabled. And then as we get into the upper middle class market, we start to look at Caseta as a solution. And Lutron kind of recognized that Caseta certainly has its limitations. For example, it can only cover up to about a 2,500 square foot home. Caseta is limited to a total number of 50 devices, and the Connect Bridge Pro or the Smart Bridge Pro counts as one of those devices, so really you're limited to 49, and that would include dimmer switches, Picos, fan speed, or shades and other devices. And then as we get into what Lutron would consider the upper class or the upper echelon of the income scale, which would be a household income of anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 a year. Traditionally, they've gone with Radio Rock Classic, and then certainly as they developed into Radio Rock 2, that's become the platform for that market. But Lutron recognized that there was a little bit of a gray area between Caseta and Radio Rock 2, and that's kind of where RA2 Select really fits in. So I just have a couple of quick updates on Radio Rock 2, and this will also be relevant to RA Select. So I'll just cover those really quickly, and then you'll see in a second here why it relates to RA Select as well. So Lutron just launched at CEDIA a new dimmer. It is the 6ND, so it is a neutral wire dimmer, and it is a traditional forward phase dimmer, but just as always, Lutron does test with various LEDs. And so there is a list of LED report cards available on the Lutron website. Certainly if you need to get a link to that site or have any questions, you can always email myself, or you can email your questions into the AllNet team here, and then they'll get me involved in anything that they can't answer. But again, so a neutral wire dimmer. A couple of the benefits of having a neutral wire dimmer, especially if you're dealing with LEDs, is that the neutral wire dimmers have a lower minimum wattage capacity, or lower minimum wattage requirement, I should say. So if you're used to dimmers like the 6CL dimmer, which is a standard 2-wire dimmer, you need to have about 40 watts of load on there, otherwise you'll sometimes get issues with flickering or the lights won't completely turn off. Typically, you'll see this like on a front porch light where there's just one single light bulb in a light fixture, and there's some ways to work around that. But this guy here has only a 10-watt minimum wattage capacity, so most LED replacements for incandescents are going to be in the 10 to 12-watt range. So you'll experience less issues with those problems that you might have sometimes with a 6CL. The other nice thing about this device is the retail price is $139. So that's the 6CL dimmer is $149 retail, and the 6NA, which a lot of you are used to for LEDs, the phase adaptive dimmer is $199. So this is a pretty cost-effective new dimmer, and it is part of the Radio Rock 2 family of products, which also will carry into the RA2 Select family of products as well. The other thing that you're going to see, and these devices are going to be able to ship on September 29th. So the new dimmer is shipping right now. The new refreshed app that you're seeing on the screen will launch on the 29th of September, as well as all of the additional products that are going to be launched for the RA2 Select. So if you're familiar with the Connect app, you'll see it looks a little bit different from what you can see on the screen. Lutron's made it a little bit easier to work with. The main thing is on the front page, or what we call the landing page. You can see at the top there, it'll show you just a quick view of if there's any lights on in the house, if there's any shades open. It'll show you, if you have a thermostat integrated, it'll show you what the current temperature is. If you have any ceiling fans turned on, it'll let you know. So the idea is, when you're going to bed, you pull up the app, you get a really quick glance of what loads are on, or if it's shades, what shades are open in the home. And then if you tap on, say on the one where it says, there are 3 shades open, if you tap on that button, it'll automatically pull up those 3 shades and give you the option to close all of them at one time or any one of the 3 individually. So adding a little bit of different features in there that'll make it a little bit more user-friendly. A couple of other things that will be a nice update on that is there is now a specific iPad. It's iPad friendly, it's tablet friendly, where it did not used to be. So for those of you that have had to keep your iPads or your screens in the portrait position, because when you turn it sideways the app doesn't cooperate with you, that problem has been solved with, or will be solved with the launch of this new app. So good things coming up for there. Amazon Alexa now can also control individual zones, where with Radio RA2, Alexa had only been able to control what it thinks are scenes. Scenes in the Alexa world are physical keypad button presses. So this will be a nice enhancement too when the new app launches. In conjunction with this, Lutron has several starter kits and several package kits for the Radio RA2 system already, but they did add this Connect package, so it's a main repeater and a Connect bridge. You can see that the retail cost is $6.99 in the U.S. It's a pretty good deal because retail on the main repeater itself is $4.99, and then the Connect bridge is $300. So you're getting a little bit of a break there. Those packages are available now. So again, going back to talking about, Lutron had the Caseta system, which was really more of the entry-level system. Some people, some dealers, integrators kind of look at it as the entry-level system is sold in the box stores like the Home Depots and the Best Buys, and it's really, they look down at it as kind of a do-it-yourselfer type of product. And then there, of course, was Radio RA2, which, is a much higher end of the scale and a much more, certainly expensive product. And Lutron recognized that they were kind of missing that niche in the middle. And one of the things that Lutron also got a lot of feedback on was, we like to use the idea of Caseta as a I'll call it a gateway drug almost. So if you have homeowners that don't really understand the value of lighting control or don't see a perceived value in lighting control, it was easy to throw a couple of Caseta dimmers in, a handful of dimmers, a Smart Bridge Pro, and then you could get them to see the value of lighting control, because once they live with it, then they see it, and they almost always want to expand that system. The problem was that if you started with a Caseta system and you moved onto Radio RA2, you'd have to pull all the Caseta hardware out. So the dimmers would have to go. With Caseta, there's no true 3-way devices. You'd have to use Picos for 3 and 4 ways. So there were some limitations and some things that that dealers didn't really like, and it made it a little bit harder for them to use it as as a product to get people to understand lighting control that they could expand on. And again, we addressed the cost factors involved with Radio RA2. So there was a lot of middle ground, I think, that we were missing out on, and that's where RA2 Select comes in. So this product, again, will be launched, and it's been launched now, so we have marketing materials available. If anybody would like copies of brochures or like a PDF copy, again, you can reach out to me directly, or certainly you can contact your fine folks here at AllNet, and they can help get this stuff to you. But the product will be shipping to distributors on the 29th, so they're all in the process of getting their orders placed, but don't come here before the 29th asking them for product, because they're not going to have it on the shelf yet. So what is RA Select or RA2 Select? Well, what Lutron really took a hard look at and got a lot of dealer feedback on was a lot of people like the simplicity of Caseta and the fact that everything is programmed through the app. The setup is done through the app. It's really simple to do it. It's quick to do it. It's much quicker than going into your computer and pulling up the RA2 software and designing a house and doing all of those things. But there were those limitations that they recognized, and dealers liked the idea of having actual remote dimmers for 3-ways and 4-ways, remote switches, other things. And dealers wanted a product that truly was a pro-level product, and not with Caseta, where there was the Smart Bridge, which was kind of the do-it-yourself consumer model, and then there was the Smart Bridge Pro, that was the pro model that allowed for integration and other things. Dealers really wanted something that was a separate product from that entry-level, type of Caseta project. So what Lutron did was take the best features of Caseta and some of the best features from RA2 and kind of combine them into that middle ground to make a product that would work in that space. Again, you see it's available on September 29th. So getting started, the old way with the traditional Radio RA2 family of products, and I should mention that Radio RA2 as it is today is not changing. There's nothing different. So if you like Radio RA2, you like going into the computer and doing the program, and through that, certainly you can continue to do that, and those products are going to continue to be supported. So the brain of the RA2 system was this main repeater that you see on the screen. Of course, you could have, if you were a level 1 installer or an essentials level installer, you could have 1 main repeater, and you could have up to 4 auxiliary repeaters. If you were inclusive level or level 2, you could have 2 main repeaters and 4 auxiliaries for each one of those. But to make things easier, Lutron came out with they call it a RA2 Select main repeater. You'll see it looks suspiciously like the Connect Bridge that you're used to with Radio RA2. It is an entirely different device, and it is black in color instead of white. So this device actually takes the place of the main repeater, and it takes the place of the Connect Bridge. So it's really 2 devices in one. So here, looking at cost here, we've got the main repeater, or I'll call it the Connect repeater. Retail price on that is $249, which is pretty good compared to the retail price of the regular Radio RA2 main repeater at $499. Plus, you don't have to add a Connect Bridge in there, which is $300. So you're able to save your customers some money. You can have auxiliary repeaters with this system, and you can have up to 4 auxiliary repeaters. The auxiliary repeaters look just like the main repeater, only they say auxiliary on them, and there is no Ethernet port on the back. They just simply plug in for power, just like a traditional Radio RA2 auxiliary repeater would. One difference here with the repeaters is with the Radio RA2 system, you had the ability to hardwire them together if you wanted to, or if you had, say, an outbuilding or a pool house, you had the ability to run wire up to 1,000 feet out to connect an auxiliary repeater to a main repeater. With the RA2 Select, you do not have that ability because there's no ports on the back of these guys. So again, you've got 4 auxiliary repeaters, so you can cover a pretty sizable real estate. You could cover easily up to about 4,000 square feet, and realistically, you could probably cover 6,000 square feet if you needed to, depending on the layout of a home. The maximum for RA2 Select is 100 total devices. Just like with your traditional Radio RA2, those repeaters take up address spots, so it's really 5 repeaters plus 95 devices. And a device could be a Pico, a dimmer, a switch, a fan speed control, a shade. Any of those things would count as a device. So as far as system components, what Lutron did is they pared down a list of the same dimmers, switches, fan speed control, appliance plug-in modules, tabletop lamp dimmers. So these are the same exact Maestro devices that are part of the Radio RA2 family of products now. So you don't need to learn new part numbers. You don't have to worry about trying to get new part numbers in your head. And this will play into the upgrade path that I'll cover in a few minutes too. So the good news is you've got the 6ND dimmer that just launched for RA2 is available with RA Select. You've got the 6NAs, the 10NDs. You've got the switches and the remote switches and the Maestro fan speed controller. So you've got most of the things that Radio RA2 gives you now in a kind of a simpler package with RA Select. So you will notice, though, that there's a couple of things that are missing from this parts list. Number one is there are no C-Touch keypads, and we do have a solution for that, a workaround for that. But there are no true keypads in RA Select. You're going to end up using 4-button Picos. You'll notice there's no graphic eyes, there's no wall box power modules. There's no LNJ module, so there's some hardware that's going to be absent from RA Select. I don't know if Lutron will end up adding some of those devices into the system or not, but at least for now, this is where we are today. But again, the good news is that it's the same RA2 dimmer switches, fan speed controls, all those things that you're already accustomed to, so you're not learning new part numbers. So scene Picos. So Lutron took a little bit of a different approach with this too, and they started to look at the engraving reports for Radio RA2 when people would order C-Touch keypads and get their engraving done, and they took what the most popular scenes were, and they created 5 different scene Pico, Pico keypads, they're calling them. And they're already pre-engraved, so these have part numbers and they will be stock items that you can just come into AllNet and pick up off the shelf. And I'll get into the programming of it a little bit. There's some shortcuts built into the programming as well to make it faster and easier for you to get in a house, get a system set up, and get out. You can see the retail prices on there. You do still have the option of you can buy a blank 4-button Pico and do custom engraving. The difference is you're going to pay $99 retail for custom engraving, and you can see here with the gloss colors, you're going to only pay $56 for the pre-engraved retail price. And for the satin ones, they're a little bit more expensive. But you can see Lutron is starting to come out with more colors for these, because that was another barrier with Caseta, is everybody said, well, I don't want just black or just white, I want some color options. So we've taken the 4 most common colors in gloss and the 3 most common colors in satin and made those available as well. So
hey,
with
Paul?
Yes.
Hey, for those who aren't familiar with the satin colors, can I guess at the abbreviations here?
Yes.
Snow, Biscuit, and Midnight?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, so Snow is a matte white, Biscuit is almost like a light almond, and then Midnight is satin black, for those who have never used the satin colors.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. And depending on what kind of the dealer feedback we get, if there's need for other colors, Lutron is certainly listening to that too, but we had to start somewhere, and these were the ones that made the most sense. The Pico remotes are kind of system agnostic, so they'll still work with Caseta. The Picos will still work with RA Select or RA2 for that matter. They'll also work with HomeWorks. So the existing Picos that we had with the light engraving and the shade engraving and then the audio, those will still continue to be as available as they are now. None of that will change, and then we still have the accessories like the tabletop pedestals and the visor clips, so you can mount them in a car if you wanted to control scenes as you're pulling in the driveway. So none of that's going away. You can still integrate with the RA Select, you can still integrate any of the window systems that you're currently selling. And I'll get into, I'm going to show you a couple of things with the app here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the integration part of it. So here's how you get started. Again, on September 29th, Lutron will post a new app on the App Store and on Google Play. And the name of that app will be Lutron Caseta/RA2 Select. So there will be a separate Connect app, although they will look very much the same. The Connect app will be separate. You will continue to use that if you're selling a traditional radio RA2 system. If you're using either Caseta or RA Select, you're going to use that version of the app. And then what you do is you download the app, and you'll notice one of the features that was added there is there's a contractor setup mode. So before, when you were setting up either the Connect app in a RA2 system, or if you were setting up a Caseta system, you had to have the customer set up the Lutron account, and you had to get their ID and their password and all of those things, which for some people was, can be cumbersome, or maybe if the homeowner hasn't quite moved in yet, maybe they're not ready for all that. Well, you can now go in, do everything set up in contractor setup mode, and then when you're finished, the system will email a link to the homeowner. You'll just provide their email address. It'll email a link, and when they download that link, it'll ask them to provide an ID and a password, and it'll set up their account and then just automatically populate the app for them with all the scenes and everything. So this is a nice touch here. So when you first get started, you do the contractor setup. This is what you're going to see, the installer contact information. So you fill that out and you'll hit next. And then you'll start adding devices. So anybody that was familiar with or is familiar with Caseta, it's the same kind of process as you would go through with Caseta. So the first thing you're going to do is there's a little it looks like a gear up in the left corner of the app. You're going to click on that gear. You're going to get a menu of options. The first option on there is going to be Add Device. So you press Add Device. It's going to pull up a list of available types of devices, and then in this case we're doing a Maestro in-wall dimmer, and it doesn't. You can see down at the bottom on the right side of the image there, it's got a thing for dimmers, switches, and fans. So what you'll do is you'll get the little cartoon hand that says press and hold here for 10 seconds. You press and hold on that device that you're activating. And then once it says that it's activated, it'll ask you, is it a dimmer, is it a switch, is it a fan? And you'll click on that button on the bottom there. And then from there, that device is added, and it'll ask you, okay, what room is that device in? We've pre-populated a list of all the most common rooms. You can actually scroll down on this image. You can't see it, but if you scroll down, there is an option for other, and you can custom name rooms, so you can create extra rooms. These are just always the most commonly used, so Lutron wanted to give you a little shortcut to make it easier so you didn't have to create every room like you do in the Radio RA software. So in this option, we're going to say we're adding this dimmer into the kitchen, so we're going to put a little checkbox on the kitchen, and then you'll notice that in the kitchen there's a variety of styles of lighting. So the other thing that Lutron recognized with Caseta is there was only a few different styles of light icons, and a lot of those were not the most user-friendly. So they wanted to give you a lot of pre-populated options that really make sense. So in a typical kitchen, if your customer is spending money for lighting control, they're probably going to have multiple lighting loads in the kitchen. They're going to have the main lights, they're going to have pendants, they're going to have under cabinets, they might have a light over the sink, things like that. So those are already built in there. And again, if you see on the right image towards the bottom, you see other. You can go in there and add extra names if you need to custom name something. And here we clicked on kitchen, and we're going to say these are the main ceiling lights. So we click on main, and then that's it. That device is added into the system, and it's ready to use. So the process for adding all of the other devices is exactly the same. You're going to click on the little gear if you look at the image on the far left, there's a little gear in the upper left corner of it. Click on there, click on Add Device. You go to the device that you want to add, you press and hold the button, you tell it what room it's in, you tell it what lighting load it's controlling, and then you're all set. So the process is really just kind of a rinse and repeat process. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get in there and start working with it. So the next thing that we're going to do is if you want to, actually I'm going to back up here for just a second. So when we get into adding in the Pico scene, we'll call them Pico scene keypads. So I mentioned that they are pre-engraved and they have preset programming built into them, which is kind of a shortcut. So if you remember from a few slides back, we had 5 styles of those keypads that are, those Pico keypads that are pre-engraved. There's an entryway one that just has a welcome and an away button on it. There's a living room, there's a kitchen, there's a master bedroom, and then there's kind of a generic one. And they all have pre-built scenes. So, and they're all actually called that: kitchen Pico, living room Pico, master bedroom Pico. So when you go in and say in the example where we started adding lights into the kitchen, so we've got 5 different zones in the kitchen. We've got the overhead lights, the main lights, we've got the pendant lights, we've got the under cabinet, maybe there's a light over the sink, and then maybe we have a dining room table that we want to also control as part of the kitchen. So when you go in and you click on that little gear and you click Add Device, and then you go to add one of those keypad Picos in, it's going to ask you which Pico it is. Of those 5 flavors, which one is it? And you're going to say kitchen. So when you add that Pico in and you tell it that it is a kitchen Pico, it will automatically look in the kitchen and grab every zone of lighting that's in that kitchen and automatically include it into those scenes. And I'm going to jump around here for just a second because I want to go back to where you can see, oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction here. I want you to see those Picos again so you can see the scenes. So if you look at the kitchen Pico, the top button shows bright, which is like an all-on. The cooking scene, which would have, you know, your under cabinets and the overhead lighting turned on. Maybe the island pendant lights would be on, maybe not. It just depends. The dining scene and then an all off. So those scenes, again, will all be pre-populated. But you can go back in, and I'm sorry, I'm going to jump back to where I was here. If you don't like how those scenes are set up, you do have the ability to go in and modify those scenes. So one of the things you do is you'll go into your area tree, and then in the image on the far right, you're seeing it's got the living room Pico highlighted. So you can click on that living room Pico, and then you can edit, and it'll take you to the screen. You look at the image on the left, and it'll ask you which device is this that you're editing, and we'll say, okay, this is the living room. It's a tabletop Pico. And then from there, you can edit each one of the individual scenes that are already pre-engraved. So, and here you can click on any one of these. So we'll say it's the entertain scene that was first populated. So you click on entertain, and then if you look at the image on the right, it's going to show you all of the rooms that are part of that entertain scene. And then you have the ability to go in there and say, if the system decided for you that the entertain scene was going to turn the overhead lights and dim them down to 25%, but you wanted them to dim down to 10%, you would just click on the lighting load that you want to adjust, and it'll give you the option to reset that level. Or you could remove lights from it if you don't want every light in that room to be part of the scene. Or say you've got a Sonos speaker in there and you wanted to add a zone of Sonos to your scene so that when you hit that entertain button, the lights dim down, the shades go down, and your favorite, one of your Sonos favorites kicks on. So that's where you would go in and add devices to it and change those light levels. So you have some flexibility to do that. You can also, when you're in individual devices, if it's a dimmer, you have the ability, just like you do in the Radio RA2 programming software, you have the ability to set trim and phase adjustment. So the trim would be the high-end trim and the low-end trim. So maybe the LED replacement lamps that they put in there, you know, they work well at 100%, but once you get down to about 20% or less, they start to flicker a little bit. You can go in and set the low-end trim on that dimmer to 20%. So when you have it dimmed all the way down, the light bulb is actually at 20% to avoid it flickering or dropping out or those kinds of things. The phase adjust is if you're using like a 6NA, which is the phase adaptive dimmer. That dimmer will intuitively pick whether it should be in forward phase dimming mode or reverse phase dimming mode. Sometimes it will get confused and you have to manually go in there and tell it that you want it to be forward or reverse phase. This is where you'd actually go in and do that. So you can see we would go into edit the device, and we're looking at the living room dimmer for the main lights. And then if you clicked on the trim, it would give you that image in the middle there, and that's where you would set your high and low end trim. If you click on the phase adjust, it'll give you that image that's all the way on the forward right, or on the right side, and that's where you would select that you specifically want it to be forward phase or reverse phase. So a lot of the programming tools in the Advanced tab in the RA2 programming software are available in the app. So looking at a price comparison, because this is always a question that people ask me, they say, okay, well, if I've got RA2 Select, why would I ever sell Caseta again, or why would I ever sell Radio RA2 again? So strictly just from a cost comparison standpoint, this was taking a look at having about a half a dozen dimmers on a system, plus the ability to have the app. So if you're in Caseta world, you've obviously got your Smart Bridge Pro. If you're in Radio RA2 world, you've got your Connect Bridge attached to the main repeater. So this is just kind of a price comparison between, if you had a half a dozen dimmers in a room and the ability to have the app, this is kind of the retail price point you're going to be at. With Caseta, you're going to be in the $566 range. RA Select, you're going to be in about the $1,000 range. Radio RA2, you're going to be in about the $1,700 to $1,800 range. So that just gives you kind of a quick snapshot of where the pricing falls into. But again, why would you want to use RA2 Select instead of Caseta? Well, RA2 Select, you can do up to 100 total devices. You have the ability to cover more square footage because you have auxiliary repeaters. The other thing with RA2 Select is that there is an upgrade path to Radio RA2 that we'll cover here in just a second. You know, why would you ever want to use Caseta? Well, if you're truly just doing, you know, a two-bedroom condo or, you know, a two-bedroom apartment or townhouse, a lot of places now, a lot of rental units are starting to outfit, you know, smart automation in their rental properties. So Caseta is a great fit for that. It's still very cost-effective. If you're working with builders and you're trying to get a standardized package in with builders, Caseta is still a great option because it is the most cost-effective. You know, and if you're just going to put a few zones of light in, maybe just for the kitchen or some outside lights, it's still a really viable option. So the next question I always get is, what about integration? So if I'm using RA Select, am I losing anything as far as integration? The answer is no, you're not losing anything. You can still use any of your third-party control systems. All of the drivers are still there. You can use Control 4, you know, Elon, URC, I mean, Crestron, anybody. All of those will all still control RA Select. You still have the Google Assistant and the Alexa integration. You still have the Sonos integration. We've recently added the Ecobee integration, which is nice. I've got an Ecobee thermostat in my house, so I'm looking forward to the new app to come out so that I have the Ecobee integration with my RA2 system. Still works with Nest and the carrier Wi-Fi thermostats and the Honeywell Wi-Fi. So you really, from that standpoint, you're not losing anything. Just like you would typically add a system if you're using Control 4 or Elan or some other third-party control system, you're going to go into your programming software, you're going to search for network devices, you're going to find the Connect repeater, I'll call it, on the system, and you're just going to pull all the command strings in. So it's pretty simple to use. We still have the ELK and the Alarm.com integration and all these other things, so you're really not losing anything there. So let's talk about the upgrade path to RA2. So I mentioned earlier on that we've talked a lot of people into using Caseta into kind of a gateway drug into lighting control, and the issue with that is always that you had to go back and then pull all that Caseta stuff out and the customers are rebuying dimmers. Well, if you start now with the RA Select, you're starting at a less expensive price point to get them in the system because the main repeater and the connect bridge are basically combined into one device, and it's only $250 retail. Your auxiliary repeaters are only $199, but you're using actual RA2 devices like the 6NA and the 6ND and the 6ANF or the 2ANF. So you're using actual RA2 devices. So if you get to a point where a customer says, well, hey, you know what, I really do want to have actual keypads. I want some more flexibility with the keypads, or, you know, I want to do the rest of my house and it's going to take them over 100 devices. You can leave all of the existing dimmers, switches, fan controls, all that other hardware you can leave in place, and all you need to do then is take out the connect repeater, the RA Select main repeater, and replace it with a traditional radio RA2 main repeater and a connect bridge, and then of course add your other devices in. At this point right now, unfortunately, if you make that switch over, you have to go into the radio RA2 software and you're building the whole system from scratch. We do not have the ability at this time to pull the existing program file out of the Select main repeater and just auto-populate it into the programming software. That is something that Lutron is working on, but they're not quite there yet, and we do not have a timeline of when they expect to get there. So that tells me it probably won't be until CEDIA next year maybe, although Lutron is not speaking specifically to it. Again, upgrading to Radio RA2, if your inclusive level, would give you the ability to go up to 200 total devices, give you all the other hardware things like the LMJ modules, wallbox power modules, graphic eyes, graphic T-dimmers and keypads, those sorts of things. So in summary, it's very simple as far as the programming goes. It's just like an overgrown Caseta system. The design is simple. The install is fast. We did setups and did mock houses, and if you took a traditional Radio RA2 project on say a 3,500 square foot house where you've got 25 loads, it's going to take you between going in and designing the system, programming all of the button presses, going through and activating everything. All in, you've got at least a couple of hours worth of work in if you're doing Radio RA2 the old-fashioned way. With RA Select, literally you could do a house outside of, installing the dimmers. You could do the programming and set up all the scenes and all those other things within 30 minutes. So, I mean, the idea is it gives you an option for customers that really aren't ready for a true Radio RA2 system, or maybe they're never going to be ready for a Radio RA2 system. Gives you the ability to sell them a very powerful system that is a pro-level system that allows you to get in there quickly, program it, and get out. The homeowners do have the ability to modify scenes from the app as well. So if your customer calls you and says, hey, this scene, I want this light to come on to 75% instead of 50%, you can either walk them through the app over the phone, or you can teach them how to do those things when you're doing the setup. And that way you're not having to roll a truck out there to make a simple programming change or dial in through BACnet and try to access their system. So it's all the best things of Caseta and all the best things for Radio RA2, with the exception of the C-Touch keypads, all rolled into one product. So there's the triangle again, but again now there's an in-between between Radio RA2 and Caseta with all of the programming options. I will, for all of you local guys, again, I'm serving the greater Chicago area and down to Springfield, Illinois. I'll give you my phone number and my email here. Phone number is 630-310-9815. Certainly all the folks at AllNet have that information. My email is pmalizio, which is MALLIZZIO at AMIREP.com, pmalizio@AMIREP.com. I think all the local guys should probably all know me by now, but feel free to reach out to me with any additional questions. And thank you again for your time. And has anybody chimed in with any questions that we can address for them?
So, Paul, yes, we did get a couple questions. And I wanted to quickly say, Paul, you're coming to our event on the 3rd, correct?
The Sony training?
Yeah, that's the kind of the post-CEDIA open house thing.
Yep.
So,
I will be set up. I'm doing a counter day. I will have literature there. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'm hoping to have a demo of the product by then.
nice.
I don't know that I'm going to have it. Lutron's been a little wishy-washy on when they're going to actually start shipping those demos out, but I will definitely be there, and I will definitely have literature and can go through any features or questions that anybody has.
Okay, for those who haven't seen in their email what we're talking about, so October 3rd here in Elk Grove Village, and then October 5th in Troy, Michigan, we're going to do post-CEDIA vendor day. Sony is headlining. We've got the new projectors and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to have representatives from Lutron, from Bose, from Eero, from Sonos. So we're going to have a lot of different vendors coming in. So, yeah, stop by and say hi to Paul and stop by and ask us questions if you've got them. So, all right. So speaking of questions, let's get right to it. All right, so here are questions just came in about the Radio RA2 software. The software 11.6 will work with the devices in the select environment, or will there be an upgraded version of the RA2 software?
The current RA2 version of software will still work with all of the devices such as the dimmers, dimmer switches, fan controls, all that stuff, because those devices are the same exact devices that are used in the RA2 family of products. So there will be an upgraded version of the software, but if you're using an older one, it'll still work just fine like it always has.
Okay. All right, the next question is about an upgrade path. So we have to pull out the RA2 Select main repeater and replace it with a traditional Radio RA2 main repeater. But any auxiliary repeaters we have in the system will still carry over, correct?
That is correct. The auxiliary repeaters can stay in the system, and they will work with the new Radio RA2 software. So yes, as part of the upgrade, the auxiliaries can stay, so you're not having to rebuy those either.
Okay. All right. So now I've got kind of a technical question here.
Okay.
So when the client is controlling a system while away from their home, either RA2 or RA2 Select, does the connection route directly to the device controller in the home, or does it route through servers at Lutron first, i.e. the way that Nest goes through the Google Cloud servers?
So technically it does go through the Lutron Cloud servers first.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what the reason specifically why he's asking that question or she's asking that question, but yeah, it does go through the Lutron Cloud server, and anywhere in the world that you've got cell reception or Wi-Fi, you can access the system remotely with your phone as long as you're as long as you've got cell service or Wi-Fi.
But okay, so one of the things, and I don't want to disparage another line that we sell here, but if we're using integration, the integration goes straight to the controller, right? So it goes like the on-site controller to the on-site, the Lutron controller. So that none of that information has to go back and forth to ping off the cloud, because that's one of the things that slows down the communication with that other product.
Right. So if you're using, say they're using Elan and they are accessing the system remotely using Elan, then it's just going to go directly through the Elan system directly. It's not going to go through the Lutron Cloud server, because the Elan system is telling the Lutron system what to do. Okay,
I think that'll address his question. All right. If anyone else has any additional questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box. If anyone is mobile and has any questions, I guess. Feel free to unmute yourself or let me know and I'll unmute you. All right, we did have a couple different questions here pop up. Will there still be a computer application to program RA Select? Or will it only be app-based programming?
As far as I'm aware, it's only going to be app-based programming. And the reason for that, and this is, I'll say this is my thinking. I've gotten no indication from Lutron to back this up, but to me it just makes sense. What I think is going to happen personally is that the Caseta system, just like, we had the Serena shades, were kind of like the entry-level shade, and then we went to the triathlon battery-powered shades was the next step up. I think personally that the Caseta system is going to be rebranded and be more of a true do-it-yourself type of product, and RA Select will be the entry-level pro system. And the idea with having it app-based is that they want it to be very simple, very easy to set up, very quick. Now, if you wanted to do a Radio RA2 system the old-fashioned way and get into the programming software, you could build the same exact system in Radio RA2 that you're building with RA Select and do it through the programming software. So you have full flexibility to use either method that is most convenient, that fits your business practice the best.
Okay, thanks for that. And also, just a point from my side, one of the things I noticed is that we're going to have an iPad, dedicated iPad app, so that should make it a little bit easier to do the programming versus trying to, work all this out on a 3.5-inch screen.
Yeah, and it was frustrating for dealers too when they would, if you wanted to mount an iPad typically on a wall, you want to mount it in a landscape orientation. And the app was just not friendly with that. So the new app.
We can also program from the iPad app, correct?
And you can program it from the iPad app. Okay. So, like you said, it's a little bit easier than trying to do it from a small screen phone.
Yeah, I think a lot of dealers are taking iPads out with them when they're when they're working. Yeah. So, and also, just a kind of a sidebar here, but one of the remote products that we sell, the Harmony Pro, it programs exclusively from the app, and I think that a lot of the dealers who have migrated to it like it because they can send out kind of like entry-level or mid-level text. They don't have to send out their propeller head programmer guy to do basic remote anymore. So I think that that has a kind of a a little bit of a compelling story for this RA2 Select as well, so that someone who's kind of a mid-level technician can go out and program this RA2 Select, whereas maybe it takes like a higher level person to go out and do a full-blown RA2 project on the software with a laptop.
And to that point, I've had several dealers tell me already that same exact thing, that, hey, you know what, to me this is great because I've got newer guys that I would trust to send out and set up a 10 or 12 device Caseta system that I would never send out to do a full-blown RA2 system and program keypads and do all those things. Now I can send those guys out, and it frees me up for the bigger jobs. So I think there's a lot of value in this product line, and I think once people get a chance to start using it, I think they're really going to embrace it. And I think a lot of people are probably just going to migrate away from Caseta, honestly.
Okay. All right. New question that came in. Can you control more than one system with the same app or username?
Yes. So in the current Connect app, you can now control up to 10 homes, and that feature will be available in this new Select app as well.
Okay.
So the nice thing, and just for people that may not have been aware, the Connect app used to not be, it could only control one home at a time. So if you had a main home and a vacation home, you'd have to create two separate Lutron accounts, one for each home, and log out of one and then log into the other. With this one, there's a little icon that it's got a picture of a house and a plus on it, and you click on that, and then it'll give you a tree of all of your different homes, and you can have up to 10 different homes that you can control from the same app without having to log in and log out anymore.
Okay, that's great. And I think in addition to like the vacation home people, I think it's also for people who are like entrepreneurs or business owners. Maybe they've got Lutron at their office. Like, Wally's got Lutron at his house, and we've got Lutron here in the building, and Bill's got Lutron at his house. Obviously, we got Lutron here in the building, so they could use one app to control their home and the office when they arrive in the morning, when they leave it in the evening.
And people that have rental properties, You know, if they know someone's coming to look at look at a house, potentially they can remotely turn lights on and off. And if somebody forgets to turn them off when they leave, they can adjust the temperature back down. They can turn the lights off. You know, so not just for vacation homes, to your point.
Okay. All right. So from a marketing standpoint, what is the real advantage of RA2 over Caseta?
So I'll actually break that into 3 points. So the selling differences between Caseta RA2 Select and Radio RA2, it really, again, is primarily based on size of square footage of home and the number of devices on the system. One distinction that you'll see is with Caseta, you're a little bit more limited on the colors of devices and the aesthetic of the devices. The Caseta product is really more of a, you know, if you're familiar with the look of a Pico remote, the dimmers that they're making for Caseta are starting to have that Pico kind of aesthetic to them. And with Caseta, there are no true remote dimmers or remote switches. You use Pico remotes, and some people don't like that. So if you go from Caseta, where you're limited to 50 total devices and you're limited in your aesthetic options, you're limited in some of the devices too. Like in Caseta world, there really is no fan speed controller. You can use a switch to turn a ceiling fan on or off, but you can't control the speed of it. Where with RA Select and with RA2, you've got more color options. The Maestro style dimmers are more what people are kind of accustomed to. So people like the aesthetic look of the Maestro style a little bit better than some of the, or, you know, some people, most people tend to like that aesthetic a little bit better than Caseta. With the RA Select, you can go up to 100 total devices. And with Radio RA2, if you're an inclusive level dealer, you can do up to 200 total devices. And there are hardware pieces that you have access to with Radio RA2 that you don't have with either Caseta or Select. One of those things would be like a wall box power module, which gives you the ability, if you're designing a RA2 system and you truly want to use that system in a new construction application to its full potential, part of the reason you're using that system is to get rid of wall acne, get rid of all those 4, 5, 6 gang of light switches on the walls, and remote mount dimmers, and using like a wall box power module or a graphic eye, you can replace up to 6 dimmers with one device. With Caseta, you don't have devices like that, and the RA Select, currently you don't have devices like that, and I don't know that they'll be added or not. So those are some of the breakdowns, and then price point. I mean, if you have somebody that truly is just, they're not going to spend a lot of money on lighting control, or they really just don't have a big need for it. You know, Caseta is a great starter point tool. It's easy to install. It's inexpensive. So it just really depends on the specific needs of the customer. But like I said, I think personally the people that had historically installed Caseta are going to start migrating to this RA Select instead of Caseta because it is a little bit more expensive. So there's a little bit better, the percentage margin is about the same for you, but the dollar amounts of what you can make on that product are a little bit higher, but you still get the ease of programming and the quick setup, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. And then you have the upgrade path, the full Radio RA2, if somebody decides they want to expand the system, where with Caseta there's limitations on it.
And Paul, I think your point about the upgrade path is probably the best one of all of them, because we've all had the customer that after the system's been commissioned, they come back and say, well, hey, can I do my pool lights, or can I do the outdoor lights, and it's like a 4,000 watt load or something, and you don't have a device that can do that in Caseta, but all we have to do with the RA2 Select is pull out the main repeater, put in a full-fledged RA2 repeater, and we can do a wall box power module and control that higher wattage load, or control something a little bit more sophisticated with a really minor service ticket versus having to do a change order that would require us pulling a bunch of product out.
Right, and I say this all the time, and for those of you that have been to my trainings, I apologize for repeating myself, but I use my wife as the perfect example. You know, when I started doing this, she saw zero value in lighting control. Hey, our switches work just fine. Why would we want dimmers? And why would we want to spend the extra money to get smart dimmers? And so I put one dimmer in our master bedroom to control the overhead lights, because every night we would go to bed and, you know, she'd lay in bed and read, and I would, you know, play games on my phone or whatever, and then inevitably one of us would have to get up and walk across the room and turn the lights off. So it was always this stupid little battle we had. And so I put a dimmer in, and it was a Caseta dimmer, and I paired it to a Pico and put the Pico on her nightstand. And after 2 nights of that, she said, we have to have this in the rest of the house. And we ended up, within a week, we had a Caseta system in most of the house, and then within 2 months, we had a RA2 system in the whole house. So nobody ever gets it and does not say, I want more of it. I mean, it's just people don't understand the value in it until they live with it just a little bit. So, you know, you can take this select repeater bridge and throw one dimmer in, and you're talking about, you know, $400 retail price just to get somebody to understand the value of lighting control, you know, or do a couple for time clocks so that their outside lights automatically turn on at sunset and automatically turn off a half hour before sunrise. And I guarantee you do that, and those people will want to expand their system.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got a couple more questions here. The RA2 has a dedicated iPad app, and Caseta still does not have an iPad app. Is that correct?
The new app that's coming out on September 29th will be iPad friendly. So the new app that will work with the iPad will be for Caseta, for RA Select, and for the Connect app for Radio RA2.
Oh, so it's for all three.
It's for all. Yeah, it's for all 3 systems. Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. If you do Caseta, do you have to use Serena shades only?
No, Caseta will also speak to the triathlon battery-powered shades. Will not speak to the full Savoya QS shades, but it will speak to triathlon. Okay.
Now, what about moving to RA2 Select or full RA2?
Yeah, Radio RA2 can control any of those. Okay. Actually, So Radio RA2. But the Serena shades really they've been rebranded to be a do-it-yourself or a Home Depot type of shade purchase. And when Lutron rebranded those, they adjusted the price point. They increased the price on the Serena shades to be more in line with triathlon. Triathlon still is a little bit more expensive. But if you have been in the habit of selling Serena, I would encourage you to migrate to the triathlon platform.
Okay, and does RA2 Select follow with Caseta, or does it follow with the traditional Radio RA2 as far as integration with different shade lines?
The RA Select follows in line with Radio RA2, so okay. It can control any of them.
Okay. I think that's it. I think that we've addressed all the questions in the chat box. Again, if anyone has any additional questions, especially for the users who are signed on mobile, please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions directly to Paul. Okay. Hey, Paul, I've got one additional question that keeps coming up. So with some of the old timers that we started with Lutron in 1997 as the original on that. So we were around during the first iteration. We were around during the launch of the original Radio RA. The original first wireless lighting system.
The original cardio RA.
Yeah, exactly. We still have our engraved graphic eye that we were given when we picked the line up. So anyway, the question that comes up occasionally is about the old dollhouse. Do you remember the dollhouse?
Yes.
Yeah, is something like that still around?
No, the dollhouses, Lutron stopped making them years ago, and I have one that kind of blew up and it doesn't work anymore, and they're a pretty rare commodity these days. I can tell you that Archibald and Meek, we are just about done with our new office space, so we're expanding and doubling our size, our physical size in the office space. And in our new office space, we are building a RA2 training wall. So we will have, if dealers, they go through the training and they want to get some hands-on practice with the system before they actually go out and play with it at a customer's house. Obviously we like if people buy it and put it in their own homes, because then that helps tell the story to their customers when they can say, yeah, this is the system I choose and this is what I have in my house. But we'll have an interactive wall that dealers could actually connect to and program scenes and things like that. But the dollhouses they're a thing of the past, unfortunately, because I thought they were a pretty good tool.
Okay. So, and I think you just hit another question that I was going to ask myself if I didn't see it in the chat box, so I guess I need to do that now. What is the training requirement for RA2 Select? Is it going to be similar to...
Yeah, great question, and I wish I would have thought to say that. There is no training requirement for RA Select, so that is another selling point versus Radio RA2. So with Radio RA2, just like it's always been, there is a certification training to become level 1 or essentials level. And that cost, that training is typically free. We typically do that, at the distributor. So we come here, and you guys bring your dealers in here. The level 2 training is always a cost training. They can either do it at Lutron at the mothership, and it costs $600 plus you got to get out there. We do host level 2 trainings twice a year, and we actually do have one coming up at Archibald and Meek on October 16 and 17. To register for that, you have to go to the LCI online. If any of you guys are interested in attending it, please shoot an email or contact your AllNet folks. And if they can't walk you through how to get registered, then obviously I can do that for you. But with the RA Select, it's just like Caseta. We will have training classes for it to teach people how to use it and do interactive, where you'll actually go through and you'll set up dimmers and do all of those things and create scenes. But you do not have to go through a training to be able to sell it. So any of your dealers, once you guys have stuff in stock, any dealer can come walk in here, buy the products off the shelf, and go set them up instantly. There is no training requirement. And as always, I've always offered this in the level 1 trainings that I do. When you get your first job, if you want some assistance with system design, if you have questions or just want someone to be there, in case you have questions on your first job to make sure everything goes smoothly and you get everything done right the first time, I am always more than willing to go out and help a dealer get started with lighting control and make sure they get off on the right track, because it helps all of us in the long run. So great question. Thank you for asking. I forgot to mention that.
Okay. So I think we're done. So I definitely want to get the information on that October training. I think we're going to share that. So how many seats are available, Paul?
There's room for 24 dealers, and we are announcing this, and I've actually asked Wally and Bill Zidek to put together an announcement and send that out. So that will be, you guys will be sending that out in the next week, I understand. But we've got room for 24. We are basically giving you guys first crack at getting that announcement out. So we want AV guys there. We will make it available to electricians through our electrical distribution, probably in the next week or two. So and these classes always fill up. We always end up having to turn people away. So if you think you're interested in taking that class, register as soon as you possibly can. The registration is available on LCI. It's there now. So if you want to register, I would do it right away, because it will fill up and we will end up turning people away towards the end.
Nice. Okay. All right, Paul. Well, I think that's it for questions today. If anyone has, well, I don't think anyone's going to put any more questions in here, because we've asked 3 times. So, Paul, right. I want to thank you again for your time today, for joining us, and I want to thank everyone who's in attendance today. We had a really good audience today, quite a few people. So, again, everyone, if you have any other members of your team who you'd like to see this presentation, please guide them to our YouTube channel, AllNet Distributing. This presentation should be posted within 48 hours. And again, please feel free to subscribe if you have not subscribed already. Thank you for attending the AllNet webinar.
And please stop by on the 3rd. I'll be here along with the other manufacturers. Be happy to answer any questions you might have at that time.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.